Michael William Flinner has a long history of controlling and abusing women. In June of 1990, he met Tanya Knisley at a club. After a night of dancing and talking, she agreed to go back to his apartment. There, he cooked soup for her, but he laced it with a date drug. Tanya blacked out, and when she came to, she was naked and disoriented. Struggling to process what happened, she took a shower. As she was getting dressed, she noticed the back of her pants were torn. That same month, Michael met Erica Johannes at a restaurant, and she ended up at his apartment. Michael gave her a beer, and she ended up falling asleep. He woke her up, told her to lie down on his bed, then gave her pills. Erica passed out, and when she woke up, she was naked, in pain, and dazed. Michael drove her home, but once there, she realized she was bleeding from her rectum. She immediately went to police and had a rape exam done. Only a few weeks later, in July 1990, Michael invited Annette Tucker, a friend he had known for about a year, over to his apartment. He prepared hot chocolate for the both of them, but he spiked hers with a date rape drug. Annette quickly became drowsy and passed out. When she woke up, she was naked in his bed, bruised, and had a puncture wound near her pubic bone. Michael drove her home, where she passed out again for hours. When she woke up, she went to the police and told them what happened. Later, investigators searching Michael's things found nude photos of Annette. That same year, Michael started seeing Christina Daniels, who later became his wife. Michael was violent, controlling, and isolated Christina from her friends. She felt trapped in the relationship. Once when she tried to go out to see a friend, he grabbed her by the throat and choked her. On multiple occasions, he threatened to kill her and himself if she ever left him. She eventually got pregnant, which enraged Michael. He demanded she get an abortion, pulled a gun, and started swinging it at her. When she tried to run, he twisted her arm and slammed her against a door. On another day, after the couple fought, Christina called the police. Michael was furious. He called her a stupid bitch, threatened her with a gun, and ordered her to stay quiet once the police got there. Michael wasn't just an abusive husband, he was also a career criminal. Over the years, he picked up convictions for forgery, possession of stolen property, auto theft, grand theft, and rape by foreign object. At one point, he even skipped out on court while out on bond. Altogether, he spent about 8 years of his life in prison. Tamra Keck was born in October 1981 and raised by her mom and grandparents. As a teenager, she joined Job's Daughters, a Masonic youth group that emphasized values like loyalty, morality, and integrity. Later, she joined a training program in firefighting and emergency medical response, setting her sights on one day becoming a firefighter. She was especially close with her mom and older brother, helping her brother with schoolwork, spending time with her mom in church activities, and singing in the church choir for 4 years. In 1999, Tamra met Michael William Flinner, who was 12 years older than her. He was in his early 30s, recently out on parole, and running a struggling landscaping business called Alpine Landscape. Meanwhile, Tamra was just starting her senior year of high school. A month after she turned 18, that October, she moved out of her mother's home and into Michael's apartment in Alpine, California. They even began making wedding plans. During this time, Tamra worked part-time, first at a photo shop and later at a casino, but by April of 2000, she dropped out of high school. Life with Michael quickly became toxic. He controlled nearly every part of her life. Friends noticed how she seemed to shrink around him. She seemed intimidated by him, doing whatever he demanded. He constantly insulted her, calling her names like cunt, slut, and immature. He would also tell people that Tamra was only with him for his money, and at one point he told an employee, quote, "I can't marry this bitch. She'll take all my money." Sometimes he would even say that she should be killed and tossed into a ditch. The abuse took a visible toll. Tamra lost a significant amount of weight and even changed her appearance. By November 1999, just 1 month after Tamra had moved in, Michael started flirting with the 19-year-old named Tiffany Faye. He took her out a few times and told her that he and Tamra weren't really engaged, that they were separating, and all he had to do was finish some paperwork like removing Tamra from his insurance. He promised Tiffany he wanted to date her and could easily get rid of Tamra. Tamra knew about Tiffany and was clearly upset, but Michael didn't care. Around Christmas of that year, Tiffany found herself at Michael's apartment with both him and Tamra. That's when Michael suggested the three of them have a threesome. Tiffany refused and cut things off with him for good. Despite all this, Tamra stayed. She still believed they were going to get married, but on June 9th, 2000, she called her mom in tears, saying the wedding was postponed. By the end of 1999, Michael's landscaping business had brought in just $33,000 in the last 6 months, and the money wasn't nearly enough to keep up with his reckless spending. In early 2000, Michael, who was desperate, approached another landscaper, Timothy Kenny, about selling him the business. Timothy wasn't interested, but he agreed to hire Michael and his crew to work for him. Even with that arrangement, Michael refused to manage his finances responsibly. Instead, he kept applying for loans in both his name and Tamra's and leasing one car after another, all while skipping the payments and racking up more debt. Michael had a habit of stretching the truth and sometimes outright lying on loan applications. In November 1999, he managed to secure a loan for over $4,400 by falsely claiming he owned a $200,000 home outright. Then, in May 2000, he tried to take out a $32,000 car loan and a $25,000 credit card from San Diego County Credit Union. The bank turned him down, but Tamra was approved for a $15,000 car loan and a credit card. Michael did all the talking during the process and even gave the bank a fake pay stub, claiming Tamra made $6,000 that year at Alpine Landscape. The second that credit card came, they maxed it out with a cash advance. Michael only made a single payment. Soon, the BMW Tamra financed was repossessed. 2 of Michael's trucks were also repoed after months of missed payments. In April 2000, Michael and Tamra bought a $29,000 boat. After just one payment in June, they stopped paying, and it was repossessed too. By the end of the month, they leased a Ford Mustang for Tamra. The payment was only $380 a month, but after just 2 installments, they stopped paying. At the start of May, Michael leased a Chevrolet Tahoe by once again lying, this time claiming he owned a house and providing a fake W-2 that said he made over $100,000 the year before. Around that same time, he leased a Ford F-150 worth more than $33,000. On top of all the vehicles, Michael owed Shell gas station more than $1,500, and there were countless other creditors chasing him down for thousands of dollars. Associates said he often begged them for large loans, sometimes as much as $20,000. When he couldn't get money that way, Michael resorted to selling cars and other property he didn't even own. He would tell buyers that their payments would go to the banks or dealerships, but instead, he pocketed the money. Inevitably, those cars were repossessed too. In late 1999 and early 2000, Michael bought a trailer, a jackhammer, and a generator on credit and barely paid for anything. By May, he tried to sell the jackhammer and generator to a contractor named David Pemberton for $3,000. When David countered with $1,000, Michael made a vile offer. He told him that if he paid $1,000 more, Tamra would give him a blowjob. David didn't agree to this, but ultimately bought the equipment for $1,400. By June 2000, Michael was over $190,000 in debt. On December 29, 1999, Michael and Tamra applied for a $500,000 life insurance policy with Allstate, with Michael listed as the sole beneficiary. On the application, he told the agent that Tamra wasn't just his fiancée, but also an important part of his landscaping business. He claimed she made $30,000 a year working for him, and that if anything happened to her, the business would collapse. None of that was true. The most she ever did for Michael's business was occasionally pick up office supplies, and he'd reimbursed her small amounts. Although Michael didn't provide any documentation verifying Tamra's employment or salary, Allstate issued the $500,000 policy. Michael paid the first premium that same day, and in April 2000, he even paid the following premium 2 months early. Michael didn't keep the policy a secret. He bragged to people that he had Tamra insured for $1 million and that if she died, he would become very wealthy. He also started asking several people for money and told one individual that he would be able to pay him back $10,000 within a few weeks. Michael also started asking people how much it would cost to have someone killed and if they'd be willing to do it for him. Robert Johnston, one of his employees, later testified that between December 1999 and January 2000, Michael asked him directly if he'd be willing to kill somebody for him. Charles Cahoon, who briefly worked for him, said Michael asked whether $10,000 would be enough to have someone murdered. When Charles asked what he was talking about, Michael admitted he had taken out $1 million insurance policy on Tamra. By April 2000, Michael asked Juan Morales, who was buying a car from him, if he knew where to get a gun. By June, Michael started executing his plan to murder Tamra. For days, he and a former employee named Jeroen Ontiveros hung around a car dealership called Autoport. Eventually, Michael signed papers to borrow a small white Nissan NX for a few days, the very car they intended to use on the day of the murder. On the night of June 10th, Michael was trying to fabricate an explanation for Tamra's eventual murder. He approached two sheriff's deputies and told them a story about a disgruntled customer who was after him, even claiming the man tried running him off the road a couple of times. But when the deputies suggested he file an official report, Michael brushed it off, saying he wasn't too worried and could take care of himself. On the morning of June 11, 2000, just 2 days after Tamra had tearfully told her mom the wedding was off, Michael started executing his plan. Around 10:30 a.m., a clerk at a Shell station remembered Michael rushing in to buy gas and milk, urging the clerk to hurry up because he was late to meet a friend down the street. 15 minutes later, surveillance cameras at an Ultramar station on Tavern Road in Alpine captured Michael pulling up in his white Ford pickup. Cell phone records and an eyewitness also placed him at the scene. At almost the same time, the small white Nissan NX driven by Jeroen pulled into the same station. The cameras then showed both vehicles leaving together, heading down to a secluded cul-de-sac down the street. Footage showed that they stayed there for about 15 minutes, where they discussed the murder before driving back out of the area. By 11:30 a.m., Michael was at his parents' house, where Tamra also was. The family was preparing for a barbecue later that afternoon, and Tamra offered to pick up supplies. Around 11:45, they left, separately, Michael with his 10-year-old son to run errands, and Tamra in her white Mustang planning to stop at Walmart and Vons. Meanwhile, at 12:02 p.m., cameras showed Jeroen's Nissan returning to the cul-de-sac. He parked, then 6 minutes later, walked toward the Ultramar station where he waited out front. At the Walmart in El Cajon, cameras showed Tamra shopping. Among the items she bought was a pregnancy test kit. While she was inside, Michael called her twice, once at 12:08 and again at 12:15, directing her to swing by the gas station on Tavern Road to help Jeroen jumpstart his car. By 12:15, Tamra checked out. At 12:32, cameras showed her Mustang pulling into the Ultramar station where Jeroen was waiting. The footage then captured Tamra's car leaving the station and heading toward the same cul-de-sac. She parked near Jeroen's Nissan, leaving her Mustang running. Both got out of the Mustang and went to open the hood of her car. As she was propping the hood open, Jeroen crept up behind her and shot her in the back of the head. The bullet passed through her brain, exited her right cheek, and lodged in the firewall of her car in the engine compartment. Tamra collapsed face first into the engine compartment, then crumpled to the ground. She died within a minute. Jeroen quickly rolled her body over and retrieved the bullet casing. Just 3 minutes after Tamra's Mustang pulled into the cul-de-sac, cameras captured the white Nissan speeding out. Even though Michael knew exactly what happened to Tamra, he spent the afternoon pretending otherwise. He called her over and over, pretending to be worried when she didn't answer. Then he went back to his parents' house and casually asked if they heard from her. Not long after, he called Tamra's mom, asking if she had seen or spoken to her daughter. Later that day, he even met up with her so they could look for Tamra together, but Tamra's mom couldn't help but notice how off Michael seemed. He showed little emotion and didn't seem concerned that his fiancée was missing. Eventually, the two of them called the police to file a missing person report. While Michael was trying to play the part of a worried fiancé, a motorist who had gotten lost on Tavern Road stumbled across Tamra's body and immediately called 911. When Michael and Tamra's mom contacted the police, investigators asked them both to come in for interviews. Michael denied ever being near the cul-de-sac that day. Instead, he repeated the story he told deputies the night before, that some disgruntled customer was stalking him, threatening him, and even trying to start a fight with him because of a landscaping job. That night, detectives searched the apartment Michael shared with Tamra. Detective Rick Scully mentioned that, in his experience, bodies found in isolated spots usually pointed to either an affair or a drug deal gone wrong. Michael instantly shot down both theories, and when officers searched the place, they didn't find any drugs or paraphernalia that would suggest that Tamra was involved with drugs. But within 2 days, Michael contacted police, claiming that he and his mother went through Tamra's things and found drugs and syringes, which they supposedly turned over to a detective. He then began insisting that Tamra's murder must have been drug-related. About a week later, his story changed again. This time, he said he'd allegedly been getting threatening phone calls from a Hispanic man he fought 10 years earlier, back when he was involved with the man's girlfriend. According to Michael, this grudge might explain Tamra's murder. The sheriff's department eventually received a call from a woman speaking Spanish. She claimed a man named Ernesto confessed to killing Tamra to get revenge on Michael, even sharing details about how and where it supposedly happened. Within days, Michael conveniently produced a voicemail to police saying it came from the same Hispanic man he fought a decade earlier. Within a few more weeks, Michael again changed his story and latched onto Detective Scully's earlier theory, now claiming that Tamra must have been secretly involved with the fireman and that her death was the result of that alleged affair. In the days and weeks after Tamra's death, Michael couldn't keep his mouth shut. He started telling people details about the murder, things only the killer or someone personally involved in the murder could have known. The day after the murder, he spoke with Robert Pittman, a former employee. Michael told him that Tamra was shot in the back of the head and even described specifics about the crime scene. But none of that information was public. At that point, even the pathologist hadn't determined whether she'd been shot in the face or the back of the head. And when the autopsy finally confirmed it, the report was sealed, and yet Michael already knew. He even mentioned that Tamra's Mustang was still running when her body was found, another detail that investigators never made public. Weeks later, while out to dinner with a member of his landscaping crew, Gilberto Lopez and Gilberto's girlfriend, Marie Locke, Michael slipped again. After a few drinks, he became emotional about Tamra's death and blurted out, "I shouldn't have killed her, or I shouldn't have had her killed." On another night, after taking several sleeping pills, he was alone with Gilberto and again said, "I shouldn't have killed her." During the investigation, Michael tried to frame several people for the murder. One of his first targets was Martin Baker, a member of his landscaping crew. Michael told police that Martin had a crush on Tamra and hinted that jealousy might have pushed him to kill her. About a month after the murder, Michael invited Martin over for dinner. He spiked Martin's chili with Xanax, knocking him out cold, then called Gilberto Lopez and told him to call Michael's house number from a payphone and just let the line run until it disconnected. Later that night, Michael called the police and claimed he got an anonymous call from a woman. According to him, the caller said Martin confessed to the murder and tossed the murder weapon off a bridge. He then told the police that Martin was asleep on his couch at that very moment. When police didn't buy that story, Michael came up with something even more outrageous. He told investigators that his friend Rick Host, who died just a month after Tamra, was working with the North Korean government to deliver special gambling software to mobsters in the U.S. Michael told police that, on his deathbed, Rick confessed that Tamra was killed because she knew too much about this software scheme. However, Michael never mentioned this story until after Rick passed away. Michael even tried to sell the story to his own parents. He mailed them an anonymous letter claiming Tamra was murdered because she knew too much about the gambling scheme. The letter warned them to keep Michael quiet. Michael also tried to frame Charles Cahoon. Michael left an anonymous letter on a police car which detailed Tamra's murder and accused Charles of being the killer. He even planted a sock filled with bullets in Charles's Volkswagen, bullets matching the ones used to kill Tamra. DNA testing later showed Michael's DNA on the sock. And he didn't stop there. To make himself look like the real target of the murder, Michael planted a container on his parents' property. Inside the container were one spent casing with Tamra written on it, and one bullet with Michael's name on it. Both were the same caliber and make as the bullet that killed Tamra. Michael later told police he was terrified for his life, but would be willing to talk if they gave him immunity. Michael genuinely believed that he would get away with the murder and be $500,000 richer. Within just 48 hours of her murder, he was already calling San Diego County Credit Union, asking about a $50,000 credit, life, and disability protection that was on Tamra's loan accounts. He believed that money should be his too. When it came to the life insurance policy, Michael tried to play dumb and pretended he didn't even know what the insurance policy meant. At times, he claimed he forgot all about it, but only 3 days after Tamra's murder, he told her mother that he had insurance documents that would make her happy. About a week after the murder, Allstate contacted him saying they'd be sending over the paperwork to start processing the claim on the life insurance policy. A week after that, Michael called Allstate asking how long it would take to get the money. When the agent explained they'd first have to confirm with law enforcement that he wasn't involved in Tamra's death, Michael insisted he was innocent. He even claimed police knew he wasn't the killer because ballistics proved it. Still convinced the money was coming quickly, Michael tried to buy a truck on full credit, telling the seller he'd have $600,000 within a month. To another car salesman, he admitted he'd be paying for a used truck with the life insurance proceeds. He even called the company that sold him the boat, saying he wanted to upgrade to a bigger one once he received the payout. But as weeks passed and the money didn't arrive, Michael became desperate. He asked a friend to find someone who could buy the policy outright so he could get a lump sum immediately. He even tried squeezing Patricia Host, the widow of his late associate Rick, claiming he gave Rick $20,000 to invest before he died. He urged her to find the money, but of course, there was none to be found. By the end of July, Michael was back behind bars on a parole violation. Even then, he was still bragging to other inmates that a huge life insurance payout with interest was on its way. In jail, Michael would claim that he was terrified of Harang, calling him a gang member who put a contract on his life. He told investigators that Harang was the killer, and even went so far as to say Harang and Tamra were having an affair. Michael went as far as writing a letter to the trial judge, insisting that Harang was the murderer and that the late Rick Host was involved too. Harang was eventually arrested too, and once that arrest was made public, police intercepted a strange letter sent to him. It was signed Eli and read like the script of a crime novel. The note referenced secret meetings, mobsters, and a man named Quan, and instructions to stay quiet and blame everything on Michael. One line said, "No witness, no case." It was obvious the letter was designed to confuse investigators and try to legitimize Michael's story of an international conspiracy. Inside jail, he kept spreading the same lies. He told an inmate named Michael Theodoros that Tamra's death was tied to an overseas deal gone bad and blamed it on Asians. At the same time, he admitted he made sure the murder happened while he was out making credit card purchases, so he'd have an alibi. He also confessed to Theodoros that he left the anonymous note that accused Charles of being the killer. But investigators never told Michael about that letter. After Michael was formally indicted for the murder, investigators started photocopying all the letters he sent and received. He wrote a letter to Congressman Duncan Hunter, insisting his case was about to become the trial of the century. He argued Tamra's death was part of an international crime ring and asked the congressman for political intervention. Michael wasn't done scheming. He teamed up with another inmate, Gregory Sherman, who had special privileges because he was representing himself in his own case. Gregory had access to phones and the internet, and Michael used him to dig up the names and addresses of potential witnesses, detectives, prosecutors, and even the trial judge. With Gregory's help, Michael put together a list with names and addresses. Michael's plan was to send letters to witnesses that looked like they came from a detective or his former lawyer. The letters would contain confidential information designed to taint their testimony, making it unreliable in court. He even suggested that an associate could take out whoever ended up being blamed for sending the letters. He mailed the list along with instructions to his ex-girlfriend, Catherine McLarnon. He provided her with a cover letter she should send to all the witnesses and instructed her to use a typewriter to prepare the mailings, wear latex gloves so there'd be no fingerprints, use his old attorney's address as the return address, and send the letters from somewhere in San Diego. But Catherine never went through with it. Instead, she turned the materials over to a defense investigator. Michael also talked about tampering with the jury. He wanted jurors who owned property and had uncommon names so he could track their addresses online. His plan was to mail them evidence the judge already ruled inadmissible, but make it look like it came from the prosecutor by using his return address. If it worked, it would frame the prosecutor for misconduct. Michael took it even further and started talking about killing witnesses, including the lead detectives. He even asked 2 other inmates to murder Haran. When those inmates flipped and cooperated with prosecutors, Michael tried to bribe and intimidate them into silence. He even targeted the prosecutor directly. Michael wrote threatening letters and sent them to the prosecutor's family and other inmates, knowing full well that jail authorities were photocopying his mail. Michael William Flinner was convicted of the first-degree murder of Tamra Keck, conspiracy to commit murder, grand theft, mingling a harmful substance with food or drink, and solicitation to commit murder. For the murder, he was sentenced to death. He also got 25 years to life for conspiracy, 4 years for the tainted food conviction, and 6 years for solicitation, but those were stayed while the death judgment remained in place. As for Haran Ontiveros, he too was convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, along with a concurrent 25 years to life term for conspiracy. Thank you for watching.